started? Oh, just in the nick of time. There you
Is that microphone working?
go. That one, she's turned on. We're getting ourselves seated here for this meeting that we're having this evening. My name is Nancy Leifer. I am co-president of the League of Women Voters here in Missoula. And we are hosting tonight's meeting in conjunction with the City of Missoula. I'd like to thank them for their sponsorship. Our meeting tonight is on the question of, now that we've owned our own water company for about 6 whole months, where are we and how did it all come out and what's happening now and where are we going from here? I want to also mention that tonight we are going to be broadcasting this live streaming recorded by MCAT for purposes of rebroadcasting for those who are not able to be here tonight. And it also is going to be available on video on demand at mcat.org on channel 189. So thank you very much. So Missoula now owns its own water company. And we thought tonight would be a good opportunity to go through a little bit of reviewing how we got here, going back to when we first had water in Missoula, all the way up to where we are now, and then going on to more information about operations and financing and all those questions that are on the top of our minds in terms of what actually is happening now that we own our own water company. We're going to have 4 distinguished panelists this evening presenting all this information. I'd like to introduce them to you now. We have, of course, our Mayor, John Engen, over here. We have Dale Bickle, the Chief Administrative Officer for the city right here. We have Dennis Bowman, who is Missoula's first superintendent for Missoula Water. Yes, just Missoula, not Montana. And then we also have Brian von Lossberg, who is the president of the city council. And I know that they have prepared a presentation based on some questions that we came up with to kind of give some form to the evening. But we'll start with Mayor Engen giving a brief history, and then we'll just go ahead and let all of you talk. There is one microphone that we're going to need to be shifting back and forth to make sure we pick everything up. So
Hard to believe that I would have the one microphone.
You have the one microphone to start. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Engen. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nancy, and thanks to the League for presenting this topic this evening. We're grateful to have the opportunity to tell the story one more time. I elected to write something down, which I rarely do, but this has been a long haul, and it turns out I'm starting to forget more than I remember. So I thought by writing it down, I could at least be relatively concise. So, the epic battle for ownership of Missoula's water system began quietly in 2010 when Mountain Water and Carlisle Infrastructure Partners representatives visited my office to make the city aware that the system, long owned and operated by a California resident named Sam Wheeler, had been sold to Carlisle, a multi-billion-dollar investment group based in Washington, D.C. The city of Missoula has been keenly interested in ownership of the company for decades. Of the 129 cities in Montana, 128 owned and operated their water systems for the benefit of the public. The city knew through filings, with the Montana Public Service Commission and conversations over the years with Mountain Water Management that the system was suffering from deferred maintenance, and that deferment over the years left the system leaking about half the water it pumped. We also knew that Missoulians were paying more for water than folks in other cities in the state, where the water supply was in municipal hands. And we speculated, based on filings with the Public Service Commission, that lots of money could go into repairing and maintaining the system that was going into the pockets of the private owner. That interest was so keen that in the 1980s, then Mayor John Toole initiated condemnation proceedings in an effort to force Mr. Wheeler, the owner at the time, who also owned 2 other water systems in California, to sell Mountain Water to the city of Missoula. That effort, controversial at the time, failed in courts, and Wheeler continued to own and operate the system until 2010, when, after being courted by Carlisle, he sold all 3 of his systems for about $150 million. Based on Mr. Wheeler's animus toward the city, In the wake of that failed condemnation effort, it was clear that the city of Missoula would never be able to purchase the company while Mr. Wheeler owned it. When Carlisle bought the system, though, a door opened. Shortly after Robert Dove, a director of the Carlisle Infrastructure Partners Fund, met with me in 2010. We began conversations about a negotiated sale. Based on those discussions with Dove, it became clear that Carlisle was much more interested in the favorable regulatory and financial environment in California and the value of those two systems in that state than it was in Mountain Water, an outlier, really, both geographically and in terms of long-term profitability. Dove also recognized that the politics of water ownership in Montana, particularly Missoula, were complex. The Carlisle deal required approval of the Montana Public Service Commission, and that approval required community support. Dove and I made a deal. The city would support the sale in exchange for a chance to purchase the system when, inevitably, Carlisle would put it on the market. We signed a letter agreement to that effect, and the sale was approved and finalized in 2011. When negotiations began in earnest in 2013, we began negotiations in earnest in 2013 by bringing together a team of experts to place a value on the system and help us prepare an offer. That offer of $65 million was tendered in a letter to Dove that year. Carlisle's response was that it did not intend to sell Mountain Water alone, and that even if it did, our offer was too low. Based on all the information we gathered about the system and its condition, the potential for Carlisle flipping the company to another buyer with similar philosophies around extracting as much profit as possible from the system without reinvesting, and what had become my fundamental belief that an essential ingredient of life shouldn't be in the hands of faraway investors driven only by self-interest, we elected to pursue the purchase of the system through the courts. We exercised our right of condemnation provided in Montana law, filed suit, and went to court. Through 2 years of motions, briefs, and trials, the city prevailed in court and won the right to purchase the system for $88.6 million based on the simple notion that it was more necessary for the benefit of the public for the city to own the system. In the meantime, while we were fighting in court, Carlisle did what we knew it would do at some point. It sold Mountain Water and its sister systems to a Canadian company without the knowledge of the Public Service Commission, the courts, or the city of Missoula. The price tag was $327 million, and over the course of a very few years, Carlisle flipped the system in the dark of night for a windfall, confirming our suspicion that they were never long-term owners with the best interests of the citizens of Missoula at heart. On June 15th of 2017, after all the legal wrangling was done, the city of Missoula took possession of Mountain Water and began operating it in the interest of its new owners, our citizens. Today, we do everything that we promised to do. We hired Mountain Water employees to operate the system, knowing that with appropriate resources, planning, and expectations, they'd take care of customers and begin the process of repairing the system. We began paying the loan to purchase the system, and we committed to make the repairs necessary to bring the system to an acceptable industry standard. And we're doing all of that today, paying the mortgage, operating the system, and investing in its future without raising rates or using property taxes. In the rearview mirror, it's become only more evident that the city of Missoula was in the midst of a creeping crisis. A slow emergency that left unaddressed would lead to huge rate increases, a catastrophic failure of the system, the possible exporting of our precious water, and an uncertain future. Our actions, once again, were controversial, but they put an end to an emergency. And if we had not pursued this acquisition with rigor, confidence, and speed, I'd have been negligent, irresponsible, and ultimately a leader who failed his community in a time of trouble.
Let me just interrupt for one question, just a moment. Any of you who have questions, we do have index cards and pencils. If you have a question you'd like to write down, we'll have people come just raise your hand with your card and we'll get it from you. We're having the questions read over here so that they go into the record and go into the system that's being recorded as well. So just, if you have a question, you need pencil paper, just raise your hand. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Dennis Bowman, Superintendent for Missoula Water. Thank you very much for letting me give this presentation. We'll go through it, and hopefully it'll answer most of your questions. If not, at the end, we'll whatever additional questions you have. So, the overview of Missoula Water currently has 34 employees. When the city took possession of from Mountain Water, there was 31. So we ended up when they had 31 employees, basically there was a bunch of vacant positions where previous employees left. They couldn't work for Liberty or Carlisle, and they decided not to backfill those positions. So we're in the process of backfilling those positions. Total miles of main, 325. Mains less than 50 years old are 222. The mains older than 50 years is 103. So we got a lot of mains to replace. So system summary, you can see off the list, 1,448 hydrants. We have 54 booster pumps, close to 6,000 system valves, 39 wells, 24 storage facilities. Everything associated with this requires maintenance. So that's one thing to remember. Little tree of how the organization chart is. I report to Public Works Director John Wilson. I'm the superintendent, and I'm responsible for all of the administration, GIS, production, distribution, customer service, and the finances. The other part of it is the utility project and engineering department, which they oversee all the future capital that were all the improvements to this system. Also, they work hand in hand with the developers and that for adding developments onto our system. Break down operations a little bit. We have dispatch, admin assistant. Basically, you see all the different activities that person has to do. Works on the schedules, help out with contracts, maintain some of the databases. Also interacts with the customers and also contractors that come to the window. The other is HR community outreach, coordinate community outreach. So we're really building our website. We're working on, we do a couple of internal newsletters to other departments, and we have one newsletter we sent out to some of the customers that we want to try to do quarterly. So we want to send the newsletter out to everybody that's a customer of Missoula Water, so you know what we're doing. So we keep you guys updated of future projects, future road closures, all that stuff, and try to interact and show we're also interacting with other city departments. Operations, the other part is safety. We're still big on safety, and that's what under Mr. Wheeler it was big safety. We are still big on safety. We want to make sure when the employees come to work that they go home. That's top priority. So we still do a lot of training, safety training. We do a lot of inspections in the field to make sure we're up to industry standard for safety and lockout, tag out, and all that stuff. And we do training just about every month with all the employees. The warehouse facilities has multiple tasks, inventory control for purchasing all the stuff for operations itself. So all the parts and pieces, repair parts. Also works with all of our equipment and scheduling maintenance and that on all of our equipment. Uniforms. She also purchases all the office supplies, and if any of the facilities need maintenance, like we need plumbing or HVAC or whatever, all the landscaping and everything for all of our facilities, snow removal, everything, she coordinates all that. Service department, just to give you a little bit, they interact really close with every customer and some of the plumbers. So the service orders, you figure they did over 4,000 service orders for the year. So that's them out there doing that activity, interacting with the customer, whether they have a high question, whether their bill's high, they think they got a leak, or they just want to know where their shutoff valve is. Or they'll even go out there, say a customer is a flat rate customer, so there's no meter in the house. They'll go out there and meet with the customer and see whether a meter can be put into the house. And when that gets done, we provide the meter, the labor, and the copper horn to put that in at no cost to the customer. The only time there's a cost to a customer when it goes from flat rate to metered is that if there's a lot of additional plumbing work that has to be done. So they share the responsibilities for locates. Since June 23rd, we did 2,804 locates. So they also get called on. They go on rotation with the distribution department that they're on call 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We have somebody on call, and we have somebody on call for the production department too. There's 2 people on call 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Production department, system maintenance. They maintain all the wells, boosters, tanks, BRVs. Also oversee all the backflow cross connection for all the service connections. Oversee the system water quality. Currently we pull about 61 samples a month that we have to pull, an additional 32 samples that are the annual samples that we have to do. So, and then this year we're also, it's regulated through EPA, is that we have to do additional samples for the next 3 years. So on top of all those samples. They maintain the aquifer, track the groundwater levels, and then also made sure that we have proper fire flow throughout the whole system. Distribution department, there's a couple of small pictures of some of the leaks that has popped up. You know, some of this stuff pops up in the middle of the night. It's not scheduled or whatever, so they're dedicated enough that they come in the middle of the night, and no matter what the temperature is, what time of year, we had one this last weekend, and they take care of it. And we have people say, shut the water off, shut the water off. We don't shut the water off. We throttle it down to try to keep everybody in water the best we can. Might have low pressure, but they take care of it and out there when it's even negative degree temperatures and maintain everything. They also maintain all the hydrants and valves. They also do the new connections to the existing system. So if customer wants an added service to their lot, they perform that. They hire the contractor, we do the tap. They also assist with the locates. They have a lot of interaction with a lot of the developers and contractors that add on to our system. Customer service. This is heart and soul of Missoula Water. So they're the first interaction with the customers when they first sign up, also when they close the account. If they have a question on their bills, if they turn around and go through, if they, you know, why is my bill high or this or that, I need to change my address, I want to go on direct debit, you can pull the money out of my account, or how can I pay my bill online? They're the first ones, and they generate 26,000 bills per month. So, and it ends up generating a lot of phone calls. They process, you know, throughout each month is 700, 850 customers walk in, which they love that. They love the interaction with the customers. They know a lot of the customers by first name because the employees have been there so long. You know, they process payments. You know, it ranges from $1 million to $2 million a month in the revenue coming in. So it depends on the time of the year. They've worked really hard to reinstate direct debit. They transfer all calls to the specific departments, and they track move-in, move-outs, and collect any write-offs. So, interaction of the engineering department, like I said before, they interact with some customers. If a customer has a question whether they can add additional service or what main they have to tie on to, they do a lot with the contractors, a lot with the engineering consultants. We use the engineering consultants on a lot of different things to make sure that you know, it's all meets DEQ approval and everything of how everything is designed. They do a lot of plan review and oversee construction of private water and sewer main projects. They also assist other departments in the way with storm drain, stormwater, sewer, and water improvements. And we're working through the schedule with them. They're looking at everything. So if stormwater has a project and we have a project, kind of coincide and make sure we're doing everything together instead of disrupting multiple neighborhoods. Capital improvements. This is the capital improvements we plan for FY18. You know, we're going to be putting some new hydrants in. We do have some areas within the city that there's some deficiency in fire protection. So we're going to put that at least another 10 hydrants in. We also have to replace some of the hydrants because they're old enough. There's some hydrants out there that are 70, 80 years old, and you can't get parts for them anymore. So if you can't get parts, they break, that means no fire protection. So this is a routine thing. We'll be replacing the hydrants every year. We have multiple different replacements we want to do. You can't take care of your leakage and try to reduce that unless you start improving into the system. You have to improve the system. You have to turn around, not only replace the mains, but also turn around and replace the service lines too. So it has to be a work together with the citizens and everything. So, we're going to replace, and this is all going to be done by the end of June of this year. We're going to replace about 4,300 feet of pipe. We're going to add about 4,000 feet of mains. And the adding is like North Russell MDT is doing some stuff. So we're going to add some mains there because there's no mains, there's no fire protection, nothing. Also, there's a project on the north side off of Scott Street. We need to add a new main over there because the old main that runs off of Stoddard goes through the Superfund site. That main, it was put in, and the age of that main is from 1914. So we don't need that. We don't need that. So the only way we can do that before we can replace that old pipe just on Stoddard is that we have to add this other main. So the total FY18 capital improvement budget is $6,585,000. We're also, you can see on the bottom, it has a little thing on there that, refer to our website, go to our website. We're really improving our website. Our plan is that we're going to have the map on the website. We'll also have project updates on the website. We're going to have meetings with the neighborhoods when we go in there, before we go in there, to talk to the customers and everything before the projects, during the projects, and after the projects. So I want feedback from the customers around the project neighborhoods. What could we do better? What did we do? How did everything go or whatever? Because we can't improve and can't get better if we don't listen to the customers. I'll let Dale talk about financing.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about the actual acquisition, the form of the financing, and some of those type of matters. So when we purchased the system in June, we did it with a short-term bond, a 3-year bond, in 2 series, a Series A, which was the acquisition, and a Series B, which is a reserve against other contingencies, because we still have litigation outstanding related to this, and we reserve those contingencies. So the terms are up on the screen there. It's a 3-year maturity with an 18-month takeout. The interest rate today is 3.47%. The rates vary weekly, but the short-term note has low rates, which helps us build capacity for cash and capital improvements in this early time. Net revenues must be 130 times annual debt service, so that means our revenues have to be 130% more than the debt service. It's one of our covenants. And our working capital requirements. We also funded a portion of the first 3 years of capital improvements, the portion that we felt that we may not generate, the system may not generate, and $3.8 million. And we also included a capital expenditure reserve of $2.5 million in case of a large unforeseen circumstance related to the system. That we have a reserve in order to cover that. I spoke a little bit of the Series B. It's an additional $25 million that has been placed in an escrow fund while the rest of the outstanding legal claims are dealt with the system. We are very confident that things will continue to go our way related to these final claims, and it was one of the important reasons for the short-term note is we didn't want to do a long-term bond issue that would have included a sizing of this additional $25 million if we don't anticipate actually having it. So when all these contingencies are satisfied, we will not need to have that borrowing. Those bonds can be retired. Some other items about the financing. So these are revenue bonds of the water utility only. They are secured solely by the water system revenues. They're not secured by the assets of the water utility or any other assets of the city. There's no effect on property taxes, and there's no pledge of property taxes against them. There's no, and it's the same financing approach that we use for our other utilities, namely wastewater. And also, the water system revenues are used only for the expenses of the water utility. It's accounted for in a separate fund, and you know, and it goes both ways. The water system doesn't subsidize other parts of the city budget, and the general fund of the city isn't allowed to subsidize parts of the water operation as well. It's a standalone entity. Here's the numbers related to this. So, and this is the numbers that were based on the final settlement agreement that the city came to terms with Liberty at the final. So purchase price, $87 million dollars is the actual price. There was, you know, the difference between that and the 88.6 that the mayor referenced earlier is that the city agreed to assume some liabilities. There's the legal cost that had been ordered by the judges for the defendant legal. We paid $3.2 million in post-valuation improvements. Those are improvements that Mountain Water made subsequent to during the condemnation proceedings. And that city legal bill in 9.2 includes all of the condemnation expenses, all of the experts, all of the public service commission proceedings, all of the proceedings in other courts that included. There was a case related with developers in Judge Halligan's court, and some transition costs are all in there, and that's our estimate total. We haven't incurred all of that, but litigation is ongoing. There you see the capital expenditure, cost of issuance for the bond. The $3.8 million in capital improvements for the first 3 years of our capital improvement process, and the Series B note. So the total amount there is $138,225,000. So it's a very large bond issue. But when we were analyzing this, and especially during the time during the proceedings when the city was looking at the 88.6 that was awarded, the valuation that was assigned by the valuation commission in the court proceedings, you know, what we discovered was that, yeah, you know what, we can do all of this. We can purchase the system at that 88.68. We can pay for the legal costs of the defendant. We can pay for our legal costs. We can do all of these capital improvements, and we can do it under the current rates, and it all works. And we've been now we've been operating the system for about 6 months, and it's holding. In fact, we were conservative in our expenditure estimate, so things are going well there. So the other thing, we did receive a credit rating from Standard & Poor's of A, which is a very good rating, particularly without any prior operating history as a municipal government. I won't spend a lot of time on that. This talks about some of the advantages of why we did the short-term bond. I mean, and I touched a little bit on, we didn't want to finance over 30 years a $25 million contingency that may not come, but there's a few other examples of why that was a good decision for us. Water rates. So I want to touch on this a little bit. The City Council adopted, during the proceedings and while we were leading up to the acquisition, City Council adopted Mountain Water's 2014 rates. And then Council did that in 2016. Well, subsequent to that, the PSC imposed a punitive rate reduction on Liberty for essentially closing the transaction without approval. And when we assumed the system, we started using that initial rate. That's 7% lower. It's actually tied to about the 2011 rates that were used by Mountain Water, and so we were using that rate during the transition period while we had an agreement with Liberty to use their billing system while we were transitioning to ours. But as we updated our model and got some operating experience, we realized that rate actually is subsequent. In fact, our 5-year models show that we can do everything we've discussed and have a $29.5 million 5-year capital improvement plan, and that's all under that rate structure, the 2011 rates right now. Now that could change. Rate increases are going to be inevitable for a water system, but right now everything is going as good or better than we had hoped. And talk a little bit about the operating model and why we were able to do this. There's some items that the mayor talked about. There's no administrative fees paid to the parent companies. We're exempt from income and property tax, and there's no dividends sent up to there. So there was literally millions of dollars that were going out of the community that are going to stay here and do, and that's where we're getting the money to do the capital improvements that are going to go into the system. We are able to provide for all current water system employees at their salaries salaries and benefits. We are providing a payment in lieu of property taxes. Mountain Water is a very large taxpayer within the city and county, and we didn't want to just have that whole piece become tax exempt in 1 year on June 23rd when the city takes over. It becomes a tax exempt entity. We didn't want to have that shock, so that'll be phased out. We have an agreement with the county to do that, and we'll phase out that taxable value over the next 5 years. And with that, I think we're ready for the Q&A session.
So we can,
We're ready for questions.
So has everybody had a chance to present?
Turn your back on.
Okay, and are people able to hear the speakers? Okay, good. Okay, good. So I'm sorry to be behind you asking these questions, but this is the live microphone, and I'm going to ask the questions in between the four of you. Please figure out who can best answer it. And just because we just talked about the finances, I'm going to go right there. So how much money was, these are questions from the audience, some of them are, they're mixed here. How much money was paid for legal fees, including bond counsel, and to out-of-state entities? Do you know what that answer is?
So our estimate all in, it hasn't been all incurred yet, is that we will incur about $9.2 million in expenses related to this transaction. Now,
Okay, and then the follow-up question is, how did the city, or how is the city financing the cost of those legal proceedings?
yeah, all of those are included in that initial water system bond, and so again, I'll reiterate that we were able to do everything on that slide there, that we pay for all of those items under the current rates. So it's purchase price, it's the defendant's legal, it is our legal fees, and it's capital improvements as well.
And can you state for the record, what was the actual total cost of acquiring the water company, apart from legal fees?
I think of it on the screen there is a total acquisition cost, and I include legal fees as part of that, really. I mean, it was part of acquiring the system. So that's, so we're all in, it's about $104 million to acquire the system, and that includes paying our legal fees and the defendant's legal fees.
Okay. Can you separate that out, what we actually paid for the system apart from legal fees?
Yeah, well, the purchase price on that slide is $87.8 million. It was really the valuation commission value, which was $88.6 million, and then I would add the value of improvements that Mountain Water made subsequent to that 88.6, which is the $3.2 million.
Okay, right, it's not a simple answer, right?
Right.
That's why you have the charts, and thank you for
Yes.
bringing those. And are these available, by the way, can people access these charts after this presentation in some way?
We can put it on our website. All of this chart is similar. This presentation is similar to other presentations that were brought forward at council. So and all of those presentations are also on the city's website.
Okay, and related to that, someone asked, is the website fully operational at this point? The Missoula,
Missoula Water, yes.
Yeah, it's
And
totally
we're updating and adding additional items every day.
Okay, all right, thank you. And one of the things that I saw on there is, and I know you mentioned it, I just want to ask for clarification here. Is it true that you anticipate keeping rates at the current rate for 3 years? Is that right? Is that the commitment and expectation?
Yep.
And did I hear that those rates are comparable to what did you say, 2014?
2011,
2011 rates?
yes.
Okay, and it should stay there for 3 years, okay? What kind of savings what kind of savings has been achieved by cutting the outside owners, by owning our own system, just simple operation? Do you have a number for that? Cutting out the administration that used to be.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have to do a little math, but you look at what we're bringing in and what we're able to invest in the community. We know that there were millions of dollars that just left the community for paying shareholders, paying Carlisle, paying Liberty, paying administration, etc. Millions of dollars.
Okay. And so this is looking forward now. I think I pretty much covered the finances. Okay, so somebody's wondering, what is your assessment of our water company's capacity to both upgrade the infrastructure, meet the needs of both industrial and residential needs, and would that change if there were larger industrial water users and other, new construction in the mix? What is our capacity to expand beyond our current services?
We currently have extra capacity, pumping capacity, to serve additional that get added on. We have water rates, extra. Our pumping capacity in that, we're not at max, so we can still pump. Currently right now we pump in the wintertime 16 to 17 million gallons a day. In the summertime, it goes up to 41 to 42 million gallons a day. We pumped in the past, the most we pumped in the past was 53 million in a day, so throughout the summer. So, but along with that is that the more mains we replace, the more leaks we reduce the leakage. That gives more water available for expanding the system.
And we're just embarking on a facilities master plan, so as part of that plan, we'll be making plans for growth and upgrades based on models and projections.
Okay, so I know that moving into this whole situation that John, you mentioned, it was about 50% leakage. Is that currently what we're still dealing with? Not a big change in that?
No change in it.
Okay, so what percentage of those leaks are in the water mains versus in the pipes that run between the mains and people's homes and businesses?
We're estimating about 50%
In each?
in each, yes.
Okay, and what is the planned timeline for, maybe this is really complicated, but what is the timeline for replacing mains? How will it be paid for? And how will that repair boost the efficiency of our finances? I know that's really complicated, you've already addressed it, but if you could summarize that.
So in big round numbers, what we think is we have about $100 million of investment to make in the system to bring it to an industry standard. And you can see that we're investing $6.5 million this year. We anticipate, as we move forward, similar investment. Again, depending on conditions, we may have more money to invest in capital. There may be a lot of advantage in doing more sooner, and depending on the cost of money, we may be interested in borrowing again to get that work done. Like any of this stuff, it's never as cheap as it is today. So we'll have to see what we can afford and what the opportunities are.
And I want to jump in and underscore, you can make a case that the most important number in Dennis's presentation is that $6.5 million capital investment, and then the 5-year window that Dale talked about of about 30 million, so again about 6 million a year. What's so important about that is to compare that to what was happening before, which was 4-ish or even sub 4. This, the thesis of public ownership largely relies on the idea of greater investment in the system at the same comparable rate level, and you're seeing the evidence, and I've been really pleased on council seeing the capital expenditure projects come before us. If we were spending at about the same level as under private ownership, we wouldn't be meeting our promise essentially under it. So it's really important to see that 6.5 level. It's kind of contrary to the idea of the savings that we might be experiencing. This is a case where it's important that we do more, and in this case, spend more money on capital because the system was falling behind under the investment regime that existed before.
But the other part of that I'll add is that that $6.5 million is improving the system. Along with, we're doing some consulting and engineering to make sure we're doing the right thing on the improvements. Under the old owners, that's not the case. Under the old owners, like, and I'll give you an example, like they budgeted $500,000 for new meters, but there was a 30% admin fee on those meters. So basically, are you really investing $500,000 into the system? Actually, you're only investing $350,000. The other $150,000 went to the parent company as profit. And that, even though they had a $5 million capital budget, if you look at the 30%, or on some of the projects, there was a 100% admin fee put on, like on a valve and stuff. Did they really invest $5 million into the system? They didn't. They took their profit first and then did the bare minimum on improving the system.
And what I believe, to add on to what both Dennis and Councilman Van Mossberg said, was when we analyzed it, while they said they had a $4 or $5 million capital, that also not only included the admin overhead, but it also included assets contributed by developers. So if there was growth, that counted towards it. We are doing about our CapEx budget is about 3 times in true dollars going into the ground is about 3 times what the previous owner did.
So just because of a lot of numbers thrown around, when do you expect that we would get our leakage rate within standard industry norms? I don't know, that might not be 0, but what is the projection?
Dennis told me next week.
Truly.
That'll be, our facilities plan that the mayor alluded to is undergoing, and that'll really target that. Our initial plan, and when the mayor mentioned the $100 million, that was a 10-year plan. About half of that $100 million was related to private service lines, and while it hasn't been a liability of the utility in the past, we recognize that that's a community issue that we need to deal with.
Okay, good, and let me go right to that, because that's the next question. Who is responsible for the cost of repairing leaks between the mains and the households and businesses? And who is responsible for evaluating those leaks? I mean, how does one even know if there's a leak that they're, paying for every month?
Basically, the property owner owns from where it connects to the main all the way into the property, all the way into the house. And there's some service lines, like in the East Missoula area, that there's some service lines that go a block and a half, and the property owner owns it. If the property owner hears a leak noise in their basement or whatever, all they have to do is call Missoula Water, and we send somebody out there to assist them whether it's a leak on their service line or not.
Okay, so that's the evaluation.
That's the
And
evaluation.
what about watching your meat? Is there another way that a property owner can evaluate? Give us a hint.
If there's a metered account, if they're metered, if they think they have a leak inside the house, they can look at the meter, read the
Like
meter.
turn off all their water, and if it's still moving.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
And anecdotally, we've had Missoula Water employees recognize a spike in usage and call the customer to say something unusual happening at your house, and if not, we'll go out there and have a look. And in some cases, we've spotted the leak by paying attention to their bill.
Do you have a sense, Deb, how often
And
this-
Dale,
the meter in the service line, it's on which end of it? Do you know, is it more common one way or the other?
Yeah, and also what the meter does is, Brian, let everybody know, the meter also stores the customer's usage. It stores the usage up to for 6 months. So, and it has a leak alarm on it too. So a customer in the past, they were on vacation, pipe broke while they're on vacation, they came back. They needed information for the insurance company, what happened. We data logged that meter and gave them when the pipe broke and how much water, so they can submit it to the insurance company. We've gone as far as hydrovacing down to the main, also to shut the corp off, to do a pressure test from the main to the house to identify if the service line is leaking or not.
Okay, so who hears that alarm?
The alarm comes through when you're meter reading.
But who hears it? who sees it?
There's no sound.
Okay,
It
and
just
then-
comes up on the software program.
And at Missoula Water?
At Missoula Water. Yep, and a lot of times there'll be a leak alarm, and then you look at it on the website. We have a website that tracks it. You can check it. You can see that a leak alarm ran for a day and a half, and then it stopped. There was no more alarm. And the indicator would go out there and find out from the customer that, oh yeah, I left my hose running. You know, they left it running for a day and a half because the meter didn't stop at all. And once the meter stops within a 24-hour period, there's no alarm.
Okay, so Dale, I interrupted you before when you were talking about funds that were set aside. And is it possible that the city is going to make a commitment to help patch those lines between the mains and residences and businesses? Is that what I kind of heard you saying?
So we had, under public ownership, we have an opportunity to look at all sorts of policies that we believe help the customer, and among those, and Dennis and the team and I have been discussing some of those policies, including can we offer low or no interest financing, any sort of incentives we can offer to the customer. So we're considering all of those as part of a large set of policies.
Yeah, and council has the same appetite to look at that. It used to be the case that actually the utility was responsible for the service line, and it changed decades ago at the legislature through some dealings that I would not call transparent. But there's certainly a recognition when you look at the information that Dennis mentioned about the percentage of leaks that occur in service lines, and if there's something that we can do as a community under public ownership to help, well, just as the mayor said, you know, low or no interest loans, or some way to help constituents and customers of the system with that. I know council has talked about wanting to look at that.
Okay, that's good news, thank you. So going back to the question I asked before, so if half of the leakage is in the mains and half of it is in these smaller ones to the homes and residences, when do you project that the mains will be patched up? Is that the priority at this point, working on the mains?
It is a priority to replace the mains, but at the same time, even though we're replacing the mains, we're going to be replacing the service lines out of the street. So and we'll add that. Then it's going to be up to the customer to assist with us, whether they want to put a meter pit in to help them if they can't have a meter in the house to get off flat rate. But then they can take care of any leakage from that meter pit into the house. So that'll be an indicator for them. But we want to try to replace all the service lines when we turn around and replace the main. So that way there's no leakage in the streets. And like the mayor said, the loan program want to look at it so that they can they get a water bill every month. That would be on the water bill, and they can make a little payment every month instead of someone having to put $5,000 out at Christmas time to replace the service line.
Okay, so Brian, this one might be for you. So oversight and rate decisions are now in the hands of the city council that you are chairing. And generally, members of the city council don't have the focused time and expertise in utility matters like PSC commissioners did, who were, used to be in charge of overseeing changes in rates when it was in Mountain Water. So how can concerned Missoula citizens be assured that our city water system and our sewer system are in good hands? Is there a way for citizens to get more informed and involved in making, helping?
Yeah, there's a few things there. I mean, one good example of it working well is the sewer system. The sewer system has been operating and has, I believe, the lowest rates in the state and has for some time. And we're looking at a governance structure that's essentially the same as that. We've done the responsible things of commissioning the rate study that's happening for all of the utilities. And so council will be informed by professional assessment of rates and the community and the needs. I think it's worth pointing out, with all due respect to Gail in the audience who's on the PSC, a lot of the time that the PSC spent looking at rates got factored into looking at return, the profit element that was allowed to the private owner of the company. goes away entirely under our situation. And having reviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of pages of PSC documents, both in Montana as well as other jurisdictions, that's a huge savings. The expense that went into with not just commission time, but the experts that appeared before the commission to determine what the fair rate of return was to a private company on their capital investment was huge. That all goes away under public ownership. So I think council has a track record of making informed decisions, as I said, with experience on the sewer system, based on the information that it gets from staff and from professionals. There's no reason to think that we're not going to do and employ the same sort of analysis and debate. And as anyone who knows, it comes down to council. All of our work is open and in front of the public. There's opportunity to comment. There's opportunities to comment in person, via email, at any committee meeting that happens on Monday nights. So again, to draw a contrast, I wound up during the 4 years of my first term while this was going on, I kind of made a vow to not ever let a decision involving the water utility being made in Helena at the PSC happen without a council representative there. A lot easier for citizens to come down to Pine Street and appear before council than driving to Helena. It's a pretty dark room in the back there that the PSC meets in as well, so we have better lighting here.
And four of the 5 commissioners, 4 of the 5 people determining rates based on the request by the private company, the private for-profit company, have no accountability to the citizens of Missoula. 4 of those folks are elected elsewhere.
Okay. So a follow-up here is someone's wondering if the city has considered setting up a municipal water authority.
We have not.
We have not.
Okay, someone might be interested in that. So there's also a question by the same person, see if I can understand it, that the city, Missoula Water will be working with the city departments, but will the fiscal practices be stovepiped so that revenues and expenses are entirely separate from city finances?
We already are.
Okay, that's covered. So what does the city water utility mill levy factor into their costs? Do you know, anybody know that? It says, where does the water utility mill levy factor into costs?
I'm not aware of a water utility mill levy.
Okay. I was just reading the question. Okay, okay, so does our water company plan to do budget billing, so to average payments through the year and avoid higher summer bills in the summer?
Yes,
Okay,
and that's already an option.
okay, it's already set up.
It's part
So
of the billing
How can
system.
people access that?
Just call customer service.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to switch to a different kind of topic, and I'm going to come back and see what we haven't covered. But how plentiful and dependable is our aquifer? What feeds it? Is there any chance of Missoula outstripping it with changes in population usage, projected changes in the climate? And this is a long-winded, but should Missoula customers be mindful of water conservation beyond the concern of how much they pay?
I'll answer that. We've got a very, very good aquifer that also changes constantly, is constantly changing. Give you an example of how much water we have in the aquifer. We have a well over by the university that pumps almost 6,000 gallons a minute. Normally when a well kicks on, basically your aquifer will drop. You'll have a drawdown when the well kicks on, depending on how much water you pull out. That well, the static level drops 2 inches just by pumping the 6,000 gallons a minute. So the biggest thing that the community and the customers can do, you still got to conserve water. There's no reason why to keep your irrigation going and having water running down the curb and gutter or watering your driveway or anything. You know, everybody has to do their part on it. And also, just remember, whatever you put on the ground, whatever goes in the storm drain, eventually will go into the aquifer. And we all have to protect it. We got a good clean aquifer now, but why take the risk to turn around and have somebody turn around and some contaminants get in there, you know? And the other part of that is that that's why we have the city county health department that also help regulate when people put little wells in throughout, make sure that if they can put them in, they're put in correctly with their sanitary seals and everything, so we don't get any contamination into the aquifer.
Yeah, I want to jump in. It's a great question. I mean, and it's hard to answer that definitively, several decades out. You have growth projections and stuff, but it's impossible to know. And the big factor, the big unknown, I'd argue in there is climate change. And in this community, this is a community that loves its water, loves its rivers, and we're all pretty familiar. I fish. I'm pretty familiar with changes that you've seen over the years in peak runoff and the duration of stream flows and such. So we are blessed in this community with the aquifer that we have. It is almost unique in the entire country to have what we have. To not be prudent about that would be foolish. And when I first was on council, I represent Ward 1, part of which is the north side. And any north side residents know we've got, well, and Dennis mentioned it, we've got the state Superfund site over there, the White Pine Sash site. And it was irksome, to probably put it mildly, to me during the course of the condemnation trial and such, to hear about how, well, we've got this great aquifer, and so leaks don't matter because they just go back down into the aquifer, and we might spend a little extra money on energy for the pumps or a little bit extra money for chlorine, but it's not that big a deal. In the north side, there was a pipe attached to the utility system that was part of the fire suppression system for White Pine Sash, and I was very involved with my neighbors on getting DEQ to change their plan for the cleanup over there. And one of the things in the engineering reports I came across was the fact that one of those pipes leaked 226 gallons a minute for well over a decade. And it's not, you would say, well, not a problem, it just goes right down to the aquifer. Well, when it's going back down to the aquifer through contaminated perched aquifer levels, that's a huge problem. And I believe one of those pumps had to get closed down because you have these perched aquifers above the main aquifer that were polluted, and then those mixed with the main aquifer in those regions. So it's a great particular example of why we can never be too safe relative to our aquifer, why leakage does matter, and it's impossible to know, as I said, the effects of climate change, water availability. We gain in the aquifer from the Clark Fork River, and we don't have complete control over what happens there into the future.
So, and what feeds the aquifer?
It's gaining from the Clark Fork, and then
Rattlesnake Creek.
Okay, and is Rattlesnake Creek still our backup source?
No,
No, it used to be.
it used to be years ago. It is not currently.
Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about, there's a series of follow-ups here. Talk about the security of our water from toxic contaminations, either accidental or as sabotage. How often is the water tested? Where can people go see the results? And what is actually added to our water that comes out of our taps?
The only thing we add to the water is chlorine for disinfection. We take, like I said, we take 61 samples a month. We also take 32 samples per year, our annual samples. We also are going to start our UCMR4 samples, where those samples are a list of chemical samples to take associated with certain chemicals that we have to do over the next 3 years. The EPA looks at things and says, well, we think the water systems throughout the United States need to test the water for this type of chemical in it and this type of chemical. It's unregulated chemicals. We'll be starting that this year. We've done it in the past, but I'll be going to council tomorrow to update them of the lab that we need to use, because there's only about, I think there's like eight or nine labs throughout the United States that has the equipment to do this type of testing. So, we do everything that DEQ requires, also the ones that EPA requires. Plus, we also do through a 3-year process of lead and copper sampling of the households and stuff for lead and copper.
Okay, and where can people see the results of all your testing?
We do our consumer confidence report in June, so that has all the information about the water, the samples, the everything.
And is that also available online? I've seen
Yeah.
it come in with the bill before, but,
Yeah, it's also, it's available online now.
okay?
Yep.
That
Thank you.
DEQ
So,
report this year.
So does the city rely on electricity to pump water from our aquifer, is that right? To the
That's-
surface? Okay, what is the backup plan in case of power outages? Do we in any way rely on gravity, and are solar pumps being considered?
Basically, right now, what we have is that we have, for majority of our well sites, we have backup generators. And the interesting part of that is that when we took possession, we found out that some of the generators didn't work. So, and unfortunate, we had to do additional maintenance on it. But they're on automatic start, so through our SCADA system, if we lose power, the generator automatically starts, the transfer switch switches over and operates the well. Everything pumps into the system. Whatever the system doesn't use, it goes into the reservoirs. So it is gravity fed out of the reservoirs. But we have, I forget what we're up to, how many generators are up now, but basically like when the power outage, when all those power lines up in Linda Vista that went out a couple of years ago, we had generators. There was nobody ever out of water. There was never a problem with fire protection or anything.
And those generators are operated gas or what?
Yeah, they're diesel,
Diesel.
and currently we have about 70,000 gallons on site of diesel. So we can operate, if we had no power for a month and a half, we could operate the system for a month and a half.
And where are the reservoirs that you spoke of that rely on gravity?
They're all over. We have them, there's one Waterworks Hill here, another one up the Rattlesnake, and actually 3 up the Rattlesnake. We have South Hills. There's 3 or 4 South Hills. There's out in Linda Vista, multiple different things. Get back to the part of that question is about also security. Our SCADA system monitors everything. Intrusion alarms, security. We've had meetings in the past with FBI, Homeland Security. We get different reports of what to look for, of hey, this water system back in North Carolina had this issue that somebody tried to do, whatever, just FYI. So everything's pretty secured. We can even tell in the past when the street department would be doing stuff up the Rattlesnake, they'd operate a hydrant a little bit too fast, filling up the water trucks. We would know that through our SCADA system. We'd go up there and say, hey.
What's SCADA?
And what about solar pumps? Is that being considered at all?
Not at all.
Okay. So let's go back a little bit to conservation and not taking our aquifer for granted. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between metered and flat rate customers? What percentage are in each of those categories, and what is the impact of that on our water system? Each of those
Sure.
methods of billing?
So a metered customer has a meter in the house, and you pay for what you use. You pay for what goes through the meter. So if you, like this last summer, we did a lot of extra pumping in the summer because of the weather and that. Some of the water bills were higher on the metered accounts because the customers use more. A flat rate customer is a guess of how much water you're going to use, and it goes by room count. Plus it goes by your irrigation charge on the flat rate is done by per the square footage of landscape area. So if we have a summer that we have a wet summer, more rain or whatever, the flat rate customer is still paying that same amount whether it's dry or rain. Where a metered customer, if it's raining, you water less, your water bill is a lot lower. If you go a base charge right now for a flat rate customer, the base charge is $45.11, I think. A metered customer, you pay a service charge of, I don't know exactly, it's like $18.85 or $18.89. Plus, for every 750 gallons you use is $1.91. So you get to regulate, what you use and stuff. That's also thing is that if your water bill goes up, if you have a leak in your house, you got a running toilet or whatever, it'll show on the meter. The customer can look on the meter. You don't know that on a flat rate. So right now, we have about 2,600 customers, 2,700 customers that are still flat rate. Some have chose not to go on metered. They don't want to. They'd rather play flat or just do flat rate. We have other customers that are flat rate. They want to be metered. But because of their internal plumbing, their houses are on a slab grade. There's no basement or whatever. And the plumbing comes up multiple spots in the slab. They can't put a meter in unless they put a meter pit in. There's no way to do it. Well, to put a meter pit in, you're talking, just for the meter pit is $1,000 plus the contractor to do the work and dig the hole. So that's part of the stuff that, like the mayor said, we want to do some stuff. We want to do the loan program that if a customer needs to do that, because it's going to save them money in the long run by going on metered. And if it'll save them doing that, and we do the low interest loan and put it on their water bill every month, they can pay it off in a 5-year period or 10-year period or whatever. That helps the customer. The hardest part is going out and telling the customer they can't put a meter in or they got a leaky service line and they can't afford the $5,000 to fix the service line.
So it's about 10%, right? 2,600 customers, and we got about 26,000.
Yeah, it's a little less than 10% is flat rate.
And the more we're metered, the more information that we have to help get on top of the leakage issues.
Yes.
Unmetered systems, there's uncertainty with that. It makes solving that problem harder.
Some of the systems, we have some zones that everything's metered and we pump the water into that zone. So we know, we had a new area up off of Jeff Drive. There's, the last month and a half, there's been 2 service lines, meter pits that are broke. And they're within, I think they're only 3 or 4 years old, but something happened on the meter pit, the service line broke. We seen that on our SCADA. We seen that area, it spiked up additional 50 gallons a minute. So we seen that automatically. So like Brian said, that helps us also managing the leaks in that, because the way our leak study is done is done by tank fall in the middle of the night. Well, there's still customers using water. There's still the hospital, the motels, everybody uses water. So there's a calculation used the AWWA calculation of an assumption of what the customer is using, what type of those things are doing. And our plan is to help out with our leakage, to verify it is a 50% or 45%. We want to utilize the technology, the metered customer, the meters, the history of the meters, to put a good number exactly what we're leaking.
And another advantage of municipal ownership and tying it to our other utility, on the other end of the system is wastewater. And today, if you're a residential customer of wastewater in Missoula, you're paying a flat rate. Ideally, if everyone's on a meter, we can understand how much water you're using and how much water you're treating and begin to bill you again based on use on the back end. And some folks who use a lot of water commercial customers, for example, today, that's the way we bill for wastewater. Eventually, we'd like to think we could do that for residential customers as well. It's just more fair.
So someone is just asking about auto pay for monthly bills. Is that already set up?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep, it wasn't when we were on the Liberty system for 2 months, their billing system. They cut off the direct debit. They cut everything off. We tried to run reports. We asked them to run reports. They wouldn't run reports for it, but since we took over, we got our own billing system. Everything came over in September, 1st of September. So direct debit's available. You can pay online, you can call in, you can walk in, you can mail.
You pay with credit cards now?
Yes.
There's a
Okay,
fee
and
on it.
auto pay. Okay. So how do the local rates compare to other major Montana cities? Billings, Helen, Bozeman, Great Falls?
They're higher.
We're higher?
Yeah.
We are higher.
Among the under private ownership, among the highest rates in the state.
And how would you account for that?
Somebody was making money.
And so it's higher because of the history of it being privately owned, is what you're saying, okay?
Correct.
So,
I think one thing an important note is that we are among the highest in the state and we're a groundwater system.
Yeah.
So most other cities in the state are treatment systems where they are using surface water and they're actually treating the water. And there's a lot of treatment systems that have a whole other plant that actually have water rates lower than Missoula.
That have what?
Water rates lower than Missoula.
Okay. It seems like it would be more economical, cheaper to have our system, is that?
A groundwater system, yeah, typically is cheaper to operate.
And is
yes.
that what will allow us to maintain our current rates? Is that part of it? I mean, somebody's asking again here, and I think it is a concern, so let's just have it answered again. How long will it be possible to maintain current services without raising rates? Can you speak to that again?
Yeah, well-
Can I?
Sure.
Basically, there's a couple of factors on it, you know. We proved so far, taking possession, we're operating the system, we're improving the system, doing everything, paying all our bills, all our utilities and everything under the 2011 rates. And that's all taken care of. There's two factors that I know of that could influence the rates in the future. I'm hoping we can keep it for at least 5 years, but cost of material, we all know cost of material goes up, along with construction costs. What's it going to cost us to turn around and replace the mains and stuff in 5 years? The other factor is Northwest Energy. We currently pay $1.6 million in power costs per year. Every time they have a rate increase, that affects us. So we need to turn, we don't have control of Northwest Energy rates, but we do have control of how we're replacing our mains, how we're assisting the customers with the service line replacements, and managing everything as we have it right now.
It's even lower than the 2011 because of the PSC action, isn't it?
Well, it was a 2014 rate, and then the PSC action essentially took it back to 2011.
Okay.
Yes.
So is there any possibility for the city to get involved as a service to customers to help them replace the line to their homes, like with electrolysis, right after earthquakes, that's when there's a lot of leaks. So right now we're relying on private contractors to do that work. Would that be would that be against the standards for the city to be doing some of that work, or is it really in order to accomplish that, or is this something that customers need to rely on private contractors for?
I prefer the private contractors. We'd rather run the system, but we want to give them the resources and help them to be able to find out if their service line is leaking, come up with, we're going to be going to the council here pretty soon of a loan program to help the customer to turn around and take care of that. They can pick the contractor in that. I don't want to be in the business of doing construction work. I want to serve the community by operating the water system the best we can.
Okay, and so Rattlesnake is no longer our backup. So what are the plans for the reservoir and on Rattlesnake Creek, the reservoirs, right? Public access, building and facilities. What's the plan? Because that's part of our asset now, right?
It is, and so we're currently working with Trout Unlimited and other partners on feasibility of dam removal. So there's a reservoir, actually there are a number of them in the Rattlesnake Valley. The one we all can access readily is up at the top of the kind of the residential area of the Rattlesnake. So we're working with Trout Unlimited on the feasibility of removing that dam and remediating, restoring the creek to its relatively natural state. That dam, Dennis will tell you, serves absolutely no purpose today. It's expensive, it's a liability, frankly. So we think that we can do some restoration work up there, and the entire community would benefit from that.
Okay, so Dennis, do you work with Mountain Water? Is that right?
I did. I worked for Mountain Water, Park Water Company for 25 years.
Okay, so I think someone did say for Dennis. Did you have any hesitation when you were working at Mountain Water about becoming a publicly owned utility? Honestly, someone wants to hear.
Yep. At first I did. When the condemnation first started or whatever, I was being told stuff by Carlisle and the president of the company, at that time of how bad the city is, how they work or whatever. But, you know, that we can't trust them, the mayor's got horns and all this stuff. There's numerous stories, whatever. But the more I worked under Carlisle, then going under Liberty, I was arguing just about every day with the previous management, the previous president of the company, because of how they were deferring maintenance, how they were treating the employees and taking stuff away from the employees, and knowing how many millions of dollars was coming out. That's not me. And so I made a decision on February 7th last year to sit, my attorney and myself, to sit with the mayor and staff, and I wanted out. And the mayor lived up to his obligation, and I resigned, and I don't regret it a bit. It's nice to see the employees are happy, they're smiling, they love serving the community, you know, and it's nice to see that even under 2011 rates, the money coming in, and we can do this with the revenue coming in, pay our bills, do maintenance, and we've done a lot of maintenance because the stuff got deferred, but also improve the system. So, and it's more like it's employee owned. You know, the employees of production, they're thinking in different ways of doing things. They're thinking that if we start this well up to grab a sample, Northwest Energy, just to start this well up, charges a demand charge of $3,000. So they turn around and say, you know what, we'll start the generator. We'll run the generator. We don't hit that demand charge. So they're taking like employee ownership of the system and coming up with better ways to improve the system and make sure that it's going to not only be here next year, it's going to be 100 years from now and 100% better than when we took possession.
Okay, so what percentage, and I know some maybe you spoke to it before, but what percentage of former employees of Mountain Water continue to you know, at the transition point, have continued to work for Missoula Water?
When they took possession, there was 31 employees.
Right.
You know, in 2011 there was 46, but there
But
were people.
at the point of transition, yeah.
At the point of transition, there was 31 employees. All came over. We had one leave after the first week, and she was the admin assistant of the president. And she tried to do it for 3 days and did not want to work for the city. She had other opportunities to go to work for apparently the Forest Service or whatever. So since then, we went down to 30. Since then, we're up to 33 employees now, and we've got posting for 3 more to try to backfill.
Okay, so I was personally at some of those hearings in front of the court, and the PSC was here. There was all sorts of promises, you know, made, and the mayor agreed, you know, there was terminology used, but he would make it the same. And is that the case? And everybody's happy? Is that what you're saying, Dennis?
That is the case. When the possession was, there was 5 employees that were close to retirement. They could retire. Actually, I got 3 that could retire this year. The mayor lived up to the obligation, and everybody's got a 5-year contract in that. Those employees have decided to stay around. They want to fulfill the whole because they said it's fun coming to work again. And one employee, her daughter even said it's nice having her mom back. So it has made a difference.
Okay, thank you. So somebody here is talking about a friend who was told that a hydrant was to be put on his corner. He called to see if the sewer on that corner could also be fixed at the same time. He said there was a miscommunication between the departments. This person is concerned about inefficiencies and the cost of dealing with these separate. Who should this person call to make sure that the departments are working together?
Dale. So actually, you can call my office, and Jessica in my office
Okay.
will forward, 552-6004.
Well, that person's gonna really be mad.
It's her job, she's good at it.
That's what we're going with.
Okay, so how can we be sure that we will be able to meet our obligations created by the issuance of bonds?
Well,
Unless somebody's gonna stop using, unless the community decides to stop using water altogether, we're, it's a revenue bond, and the revenue is coming in and we're obliged to pay that, and we're doing that today. There's no reason for us to default on those payments.
Okay. So someone is wondering, these are some throwbacks to what we already discussed, but let's address them. The initial cost for legal assistance in owning the water was estimated to be $400,000, and now we're at a 13. What this person says 13 million that the legal costs. Please explain what happened.
The mayor isn't very good at estimating. Yeah, I mean, we had anticipated either a negotiated deal or a condemnation that we didn't anticipate Carlisle engaging in the activity engaged in. Robert Dove made it very clear that he would make it as expensive as possible for the city of Missoula to acquire this system through condemnation. And if you look at, if you pay attention to their filings, if you pay attention to their activities throughout this process, they did their best to make good on that promise. And our responsibility was to meet that challenge head on with our own attorneys. Way more expensive than I ever anticipated, and I'll own that all day long.
Okay. Bigger than job. So I'm going to read exactly what someone wrote. What in the world made the city think Carlisle would honor that letter of agreement to give us the opportunity to buy? Didn't we have any other options at that time?
I don't think we had any other options at that time. I think, frankly, had the PSC not approved that transaction, conversations I had with Mr. Dove suggested that, frankly, he didn't care. A regulatory body in Montana wasn't going to stop Carlisle from doing what it wanted to do.
Which was borne out by the sale to Liberty.
Right, and he was my only dance partner. I didn't have anybody else to talk to, and to get where we were going to get, I had to put some trust in it. I also had some advice from folks who had dealings with Carlisle entities who suggested that the most important thing to them is money, and this was a pretty good business deal. And so folks who were familiar with Carlisle and with Dove in particular suggested, we think the letter agreement gets you where you need to be.
And I'm going to jump back, despite my better judgment, on the legal fee number. Dale mentioned this, but it was pretty subtle, and it is worth pointing out or underscoring that the city's legal fees, the 9.2 there, include, as he said, but it's easy to forget, all of the work that also happened at the PSC with the involvement with our attorneys as Carlisle was attempting to sell and consummate that deal with Liberty. So it wasn't just a condemnation fight. There was also hundreds of hours involved in the PSC hearings that was costly as well. But there's a little bit of apples and oranges in that, and it's worth underscoring it.
And in that fee is part of the expert witnesses. So we paid an engineering firm, HDR, hundreds of thousands of dollars to evaluate the system so that we could understand what we were up against and also make our case for the fact that the current owners had and were continuing to defer maintenance.
Okay. So just for the person who asked about whether the water company has anything to do with irrigation ditches, it does not. It has to do with local jurisdictions, county boards. And Dale, would you be the person that they could find out more about that?
yeah, let me talk to Hillary, and we should, let me give you my card after this. And
Yeah, whoever, oh, okay, you found the person, okay, good. So one last question, and then we can either end or take more questions from the audience if something has come up. But this is looking back and this is looking forward, maybe this is a good way to end it. The former mayor, John Toole, believed that Missoula's growth was adversely affected by having a private water utility and a public sewer utility. And so what do you think he meant by that? And how do you think a municipal ownership of both water and sewer systems will affect the quality of the pattern of our growth here in Missoula?
So utilities are a catalyst for growth, and without sewer and water, you can't have any reasonable type of density. It's just not doable. So those utilities are catalysts for growth. When they don't operate under the same jurisdiction or under the same operational model, you can have sewer extension without the water company wanting to extend, so you end up with sewer and wells. These two utilities provide us additional, they're tools for us to help manage growth and help guide growth based on all of the other policies that we have. Our facilities plan will most likely draw a new boundary. Today our wastewater boundary, for example, we have areas in that boundary that it makes absolutely zero sense for the city to extend sewer to, but it's in our wastewater service area. So we have folks ask, it's in your boundary, why won't you run a pipe hither and yon? And so we want to align those. We want to align our water service area, our wastewater service area, and all of this goes into growth management and guiding quality growth in the community. It works hand in glove with land use planning. It works hand in glove with transportation planning. They're all part of a whole.
Okay, thank you. So is there anything else that our panelists would like to say that they haven't had a chance to say? Anything that has come to you before we end, and Nancy will take it from here? Is there anything?
Well, I will just tell you that we long assumed that the employees of Mountain Water were interested in serving customers, and what we've discovered in practice is we have folks like Dennis Bowman who comes to work every day with one idea in mind, and that is how does he serve the customers of Mountain Water Company. And that guides everything he does, and it works throughout the organization. I find it inspiring as a public servant. I think council recognizes that as well, so we're grateful to Dennis and the employees for sticking with us under difficult circumstances. They were, I had my horns removed and it's all worked out.
Yeah, I want to express my appreciation for Dennis and the entire crew as well. And I also, this is much more boring, but Dale kind of prompted me, and I had a constituent ask when they read the piece in the Missoulian, there was a part about now with municipal water, basically a statement to the effect that the city now, I think it says could, but there's some confusion over what could mean, go to developments that are on septic systems and require them to hook up to sewer. There is no plan, there is no policy to go and seek out now because of the public ownership of the water to go do that. When people are on septic systems, when the septic system is, if it's going to fail or reach the end of its life, there are opportunities to connect to city sewer, and there's a process. But the city and council has no appetite as a policy to go forward and now suddenly, as a result of the acquisition, go seek out people who are on septic systems and convert them.
Okay.
Fair to say? Did I get that right?
All right, thank you for that clarification.
I just have one question. This is Gail Gucci, who is the public service.
What?
Yes.
Thanks for this, it was very informative, and I really...
Can you come over and use the microphone to your question? It's right there.
Okay.
We like to make this as awkward as possible.
Nice, bring it over here. So, can you hear? Okay, so I was wondering, because about your discussion about metering was very interesting to me, and it obviously gives us a lot of information. It gives customer usage, it gives usage on the system, and then leakage. So now under new ownership of the city, I'm wondering if you are going to put into plans actual incentivizing people to conserve water. Because even though our community is not short on water, communities all over this nation are very short on water, and we don't ever want to run into that. But also, conservation is important. So I'm just wondering if you're thinking about that in the future.
Yeah, so the first incentive is if you have a meter, you are going to pay less than flat rate. And because you have a meter, you can start to make some choices about how you use water and save money if you want to. As part of this large suite of policies, however, I think we can certainly consider conservation measures and think about providing some of those incentives. In addition, again, this laundry list of choices, do we want as a utility to begin handing out low flow shower heads and fixtures? Do we want to help people buy toilets that right? All of that. So I think all of that's on the table.
Yeah,
And the
council's
reason I
perspective,
ask
yes.
that is because, we regulated, obviously, Mountain Water, but also Northwestern Energy. And we worked hard with them to try to bring conservation into being a bigger piece of their business plan. And now you're no longer regulated by the PSC, but still, you have those opportunities, and I think this community would look very favorably upon that.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Mayor.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. So on behalf of the League of Women Voters, I'd like to thank all of you for being here for this excellent presentation of information. I think as a resident of the city of Missoula, I hope all the rest of you feel that same way too after hearing about all of this. I'm very proud and happy that we own our own water company. I think we're doing a good job. And go forth and keep doing the good work you're doing, and thank you all for coming tonight. Again, this will be rebroadcast on MCAT, on video on demand on channel 189. If you're interested in watching it at some other time, you can do it that way, and there'll be more information about that on the MCAT website. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Nicely done, gentlemen.
Teamwork.
Can't handle a team that has won a championship 5 out of 9 years.
Well, I went to Central Florida,
I love. Did you see what did you hear what they did for the transitive property? They declared themselves, they even put on a banner, they declared themselves national champions by the transitive property because they beat